Elena Vasquez stood before the massive crystal doors that led to the Galactic Council chambers. She had traveled farther from Earth than any human before her. The space station where the council met was bigger than most cities back home. Ships from 12 different alien races docked around it like metal flowers around a glass stem. The doors opened with a sound like singing glass. Elena walked into the chamber and tried not to stare. The council members sat in a perfect circle, each one stranger than the last. The Zephyrians looked like living crystals that caught and bent light in impossible ways. The Korvaxi moved like a single creature made of 1,000 insects. The Altarians floated above their seats, their large eyes glowing with soft blue light. "Ambassador Vasquez of Earth," said the Hegemarch, a tall being covered in golden scales. "We welcome humanity to the Galactic Council." Elena bowed. She had practiced this moment 100 times, but nothing had prepared her for the reality. The council chamber hummed with energy from a dozen different species. Some breathed different gases. Others communicated through colors or sounds her ears could barely hear. "Thank you for accepting our application," Elena said. "Earth is honored to join this alliance." The Hegemarch's reptilian face showed what might have been a smile. "Your species shows promise. You developed faster than light travel, in only 50 years after discovering nuclear energy. Most species take much longer." Elena felt proud, but she noticed something else. The way the Hegemarch spoke suggested humans were just another addition to their collection, like they had seen it all before. A Zephyrian council member spoke, its voice like wind chimes. "We have prepared standard defensive agreements and trade contracts. Your species will fit well into our existing structure." Elena nodded and accepted the datapad containing Earth's new status. As she read through the documents, an alarm sounded through the chamber. Red lights flashed, and several council members began speaking at once. "What is happening?" Elena asked. "A minor border dispute," said the Hegemarch, waving a scaled hand. "The Zephyrians and Korvaxi are having another disagreement. This happens frequently. Nothing to concern yourself with." On the large display screens around the chamber, Elena watched as sleek crystal ships faced off against dark, angular vessels that moved like swarms of angry bees. The crystal ships formed perfect geometric patterns, while the swarm ships created complex spirals and waves. "How long has this conflict been going on?" Elena asked. "Approximately 115 of your years," said an Altarian representative, its mental voice echoing in Elena's mind. "They fight over mineral rights in the Kepler 442 system." Elena watched the ships on the screen. They fired at each other with precise, almost ritual movements. The battle looked more like a dance than actual warfare. Neither side seemed to be trying very hard to win. "Have you tried mediation?" she asked. The Draconis Empire representative laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Many times. These two species are too proud to listen to reason. They prefer their endless stalemate." Elena studied the battle footage more carefully. The Zephyrian ships always formed the same triangular attack patterns. The Korvaxi ships always responded with the same spiral defensive maneuvers. It was like watching two chess players who had memorized only one opening sequence. "What happens if one side actually wins?" Elena asked. The question seemed to surprise several council members. The Hegemarch tilted his great head. "Win? This is not about winning. This is about honor and territory. The fighting itself serves their purposes." Elena felt confused. Where she came from, people fought wars to achieve goals. They used strategy and adaptation to overcome enemies. What she was watching looked more like a sporting event with real weapons. The battle continued for 3 hours. Both sides lost a few ships, then withdrew to their respective borders. The council members treated it like watching the weather. Mildly interesting, but not worth much attention. "Does this happen often?" Elena asked. "Every few months," said the Hegemarch. "Sometimes more frequently during their mating seasons. We have learned to schedule around their conflicts." Elena looked around the chamber. These species had been part of galactic civilization for thousands of years. They had technology that seemed like magic to human eyes. They could travel between stars and communicate across vast distances instantly. Yet they seemed to treat warfare like some kind of elaborate game. On Earth, Elena said carefully. The Altarian's large eyes focused on her. Your species fought many wars? Elena nodded. Unfortunately, yes. We fought each other for resources, territory, ideology, and sometimes just because we were afraid of each other. How barbaric, said the Zephyrian representative, its crystal body flashing with disapproving colors. Perhaps, Elena admitted, but we also learned to adapt. We developed new strategies when old ones failed. We studied our enemies and found their weaknesses. The Korvaxi cluster made a buzzing sound that translated as, adaptation is inefficient. Proper tactics, once established, remain proper. Elena bit back her response. These beings had achieved galactic peace by turning conflict into ritual. Maybe that was better than humanity's bloody history, but watching the stalemate on the screens, she wondered if they had forgotten how to actually fight. The council session continued with discussions of trade routes and resource allocation. Elena signed the agreements that would make Earth an official member of the galactic community. She received her diplomatic credentials and communication codes. As the session ended, the Hegemarch approached her privately. Your species will find its place among us, Ambassador. In time, you will understand our ways. Elena smiled politely. I'm sure we will learn much from you. But as she walked back to her ship, Elena found herself thinking about the battle she had witnessed. Two mighty space fleets, locked in an endless cycle of predictable moves and countermoves. On Earth, such a conflict would have been resolved decades ago, through superior strategy, decisive action, or exhaustion of resources. She sent her report back to Earth with mixed feelings. Humanity had gained access to incredible technology and knowledge. They were now part of a galactic community that had maintained peace for millennia, yet something bothered her about the Council's casual attitude toward the Zephyrian-Korvaxi conflict. They seemed content to let it continue forever, as long as it didn't spread. Elena wondered what would happen if someone actually tried to end the fighting for good. 3 months had passed since Elena signed Earth's membership agreement with the Galactic Council. She had been settling into her role as humanity's first galactic ambassador, when the emergency alert came through her communication device. The council was calling an urgent session. All members were required to attend immediately. Elena rushed to the council chamber and found chaos. The usually calm Altarians were floating in agitated circles. The Zephyrian representatives flickered with angry red and orange lights. The Korvaxi cluster buzzed so loudly that the translation system struggled to keep up. Order! The Hegemarch's voice boomed across the chamber. We will discuss this crisis in a civilized manner. Elena took her seat and activated her personal display to catch up on what had happened. The information made her stomach drop. The Zephyrian-Korvaxi border conflict had exploded into something much more serious. A Korvaxi breeding world called Nexus Prime was now under direct threat. The planet held billions of eggs from their latest reproductive cycle. If those eggs were destroyed, it would be a devastating blow to their species' future. The Zephyrians claimed that system belonged to them according to ancient territorial agreements. The situation has moved beyond acceptable parameters, said the Korvaxi representative, its 1,000 voices speaking as one. We demand immediate council intervention. The Zephyrian delegate's crystal body flashed bright white with anger. The Nexus system has been ours for over 2,000 years. We have mineral extraction rights granted by the old empire. Elena watched the display screens showing the current military buildup. Hundreds of ships from both sides were massing near the disputed system. Unlike their previous ritual battles, this looked like preparation for real war. Previous mediation attempts have failed, reported an Altarian counselor. The Draconis Empire spent 6 months trying to negotiate a settlement. The Hegemarch himself offered to personally arbitrate. Neither side will compromise. Elena studied the tactical displays. Both fleets were positioned exactly as she had seen in their previous encounters. The Zephyrians formed their traditional geometric patterns. The Korvaxi created their usual spiral formations. Even facing potential extinction, they followed the same old playbooks. What about economic sanctions? Suggested the Villani representative. A slug-like being known for their trade expertise. We could freeze their trade agreements until they negotiate. Impossible, said the Hegemarch. Both species have threatened to withdraw from the Council entirely if we take sides. We cannot afford to lose 2 founding members. The debate continued for hours. Every traditional solution had been tried and failed. Military intervention would mean the Council choosing sides, which could split their alliance permanently. Economic pressure had no effect on 2 species convinced they were fighting for their very survival. Elena listened quietly, studying the problem from every angle. Finally, she cleared her throat and spoke up. What if we tried a different approach? The chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to the newest member of their alliance. Ambassador Vasquez, said the Hegemarch carefully. While we appreciate your enthusiasm, this is a complex situation that requires experience with galactic diplomacy. I understand, Elena replied. But sometimes fresh eyes can see solutions that others might miss. What would it cost to let Earth attempt mediation? Several council members made sounds that Elena's translator interpreted as polite laughter. The Draconis representative's metal face showed clear amusement. No offense to your species, said the Draconis leader. But the Altarians are natural telepaths who can read emotional intentions directly. The Draconis Empire has over 4,000 years of diplomatic experience. If we cannot resolve this conflict, what makes you think humans can? Elena had expected this reaction. You're right that we lack your experience. But we might approach the problem differently. The Corvaxi cluster buzzed with discussion among itself before speaking. The hive queens grow impatient. If the Council cannot provide a solution within 1 standard cycle, we will take necessary action to protect our breeding grounds. The Zephyrian delegate flashed threatening colors. Any attack on our rightful territory will be met with full retaliation. Elena saw the Council members exchange worried glances. They were running out of time and options. What exactly are you proposing? Asked the Hegemarch. Elena stood up, trying to project more confidence than she felt. Give Earth's diplomatic team 1 month to study the situation and propose a solution. If we fail, you're no worse off than you are now. And if your efforts make things worse, demanded the Draconis representative, then you can say you tried everything before considering military action, Elena replied. The chamber erupted in debate. Some council members thought the idea was worth trying. Others worried about letting an inexperienced species handle such a delicate situation. The Altarians seemed intrigued by something they sensed in Elena's mind. After an hour of discussion, the Hegemarch called for a vote. All in favor of allowing Earth to attempt mediation? Elena held her breath as the votes were cast. It was close. But the motion passed by a narrow margin. Very well, said the Hegemarch. Earth has 28 standard days to propose a solution that both parties will accept. I hope your confidence is justified, Ambassador. Elena felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She was about to commit humanity to its first major galactic crisis. If they failed, it would cement their reputation as naive newcomers who didn't understand how the galaxy worked. But she also felt excited. Elena had been studying the conflict data for months, and she had noticed things that the other council members seemed to overlook. Both species were locked into rigid thinking patterns that prevented them from seeing alternative solutions. After the session, Elena immediately sent a priority message back to Earth. She requested a full diplomatic team, but not the kind that usually handled such situations. She wanted military strategists, historians, and analysts who specialized in conflict resolution. Most importantly, she wanted Admiral Sarah Chen. Chen had commanded peacekeeping operations in the most volatile regions of Earth. She understood how to break deadlocks when all sides refused to budge. The response from Earth came back faster than Elena had expected. Admiral Chen would lead the mission personally, bringing with her some of the most creative military minds humanity had produced. As Elena prepared for their arrival, she reviewed everything known about Zephyrian and Corvaxi military doctrine. Both species had been fighting the same way for centuries. Their tactics were sophisticated but completely predictable. Elena began to wonder what would happen if someone introduced strategies they had never seen before. On Earth, military innovation came from desperation and necessity. When old methods failed, humans invented new ones. She looked out at the stars where two ancient species were preparing for a war that could destroy one of them entirely. They were so focused on their traditional approaches that they couldn't see any other options. Maybe it was time to show them that there were other ways to fight. Or better yet, other ways to win without fighting at all. Elena smiled as she imagined Admiral Chen's reaction to the tactical data. This was going to be interesting. Admiral Sarah Chen arrived at the Council space station with a fleet that confused everyone who saw it. Instead of the uniform warships most species used, the human flotilla contained vessels of wildly different designs and sizes. Some were barely larger than shuttles, others were massive ships bristling with weapons. A few looked like cargo haulers modified for combat. Elena met Chen at the docking bay. The admiral was a compact woman with graying hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She moved with the easy confidence of someone who had commanded forces in dozens of conflicts. "Admiral Chen," Elena said, offering a respectful bow. "Thank you for coming." "Ambassador," Chen replied with a quick handshake. "I've read your reports. This situation is more interesting than I expected." Behind Chen, a steady stream of personnel disembarked from the human ships. Elena noticed they wore different uniforms representing various military branches, civilian analysts, and even some people who looked like university professors. "I thought you were bringing a diplomatic team," Elena said. Chen smiled grimly. "I am. But my kind of diplomacy requires understanding what we're really dealing with." She gestured toward the tactical displays showing the Zephyrian and Korvaxi forces. "Tell me, how long have these two species been fighting exactly the same way?" Elena pulled up the historical data. "Their basic tactical formations haven't changed in over 300 years. The weapons are more advanced, but they use them according to the same principles." "Interesting," murmured Dr. James Wright, a military historian who had joined Chen's team. "They've essentially fossilized their military doctrine." Chen studied the display screens showing both fleets. The Zephyrian crystal ships maintained perfect triangular formations that looked beautiful, but rigid. The Korvaxi swarms moved in complex spirals that were mathematically precise but completely predictable. "They're both fighting the last war," Chen said. "Actually, they're fighting the same war over and over again." Elena felt hopeful. "So you think you can find a solution?" "Oh, I think we can find several solutions," Chen replied. "The question is which one will work best without causing a galactic incident." Over the next few days, Chen's team worked with an intensity that impressed the Council observers. They analyzed centuries of battle data, studied cultural records, and interviewed every species that had attempted mediation. Captain Yuki Tanaka, an expert in electronic warfare, discovered that Zephyrian crystal ships operated on harmonic frequencies that made them vulnerable to specific sound waves. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Torres, who specialized in small unit tactics, identified critical weaknesses in Korvaxi hive mind communication systems. "The problem isn't that they're too strong," Chen explained to Elena. "The problem is that they've never had to adapt. They've been fighting each other for so long that they know each other's moves perfectly. It's like watching two chess grandmasters play the same opening sequence for a century." "But how does that help us stop the fighting?" Elena asked. Chen's smile was predatory. "We're going to show them what happens when someone plays a completely different game." Chen requested a meeting with representatives from both species. The session took place in neutral space, with Council observers monitoring everything. The Zephyrian delegate was a living crystal sculpture that refracted light into rainbow patterns. The Korvaxi representative was a cluster of insect-like beings that moved and spoke as one entity. "We have studied your conflict," Chen began, "and we believe there may be alternatives to direct military confrontation." The Zephyrian delegate flashed dismissive colors. "Your species lacks the experience to understand our situation. This is a matter of honor and ancient rights." The Korvaxi cluster buzzed in agreement. "The breeding grounds must be protected. No compromise is possible when the survival of future generations is at stake." "I understand," Chen said calmly. "But before you commit to a war that could destroy one or both of your species, would you be willing to observe a demonstration?" Both representatives seemed intrigued despite themselves. Chen explained her proposal. A military exercise where human forces would simulate combat against mock versions of both fleets using captured drone technology. "You want to fight simulated versions of our forces?" the Zephyrian asked. "I want to show you possibilities you haven't considered," Chen replied. "If our demonstration fails to impress you, you can proceed with your plans. But if we show you something that changes your perspective on this conflict, perhaps we can find a solution that saves both your species." The Corvaxi cluster conferred among itself in rapid buzzing sounds. "What do you hope to prove with this exercise?" "That there are always more options than you think," Chen said. "Sometimes the best way to win a war is to change the rules." Both species agreed to the demonstration, more out of curiosity than any real hope for success. The exercise would take place in an empty system nearby, with full sensor coverage, so everyone could observe the results. Chen's fleet moved to the testing area and began deploying equipment. The human ships scattered across the system in what looked like complete chaos to the alien observers. Some vessels hid behind asteroids. Others took up positions that seemed to serve no tactical purpose. The simulated Zephyrian fleet activated first. Hundreds of crystal drone ships formed their traditional triangular attack patterns and advanced toward the human positions. It was a formation that had proven successful against Corvaxi forces dozens of times. What happened next shocked everyone watching. The human forces didn't meet the attack head-on as expected. Instead, small groups of ships appeared from unexpected directions, striking at the edges of the crystal formation before disappearing again. Other human vessels used the system's asteroid field as cover, emerging just long enough to fire before vanishing back into hiding. Captain Tanaka's electronic warfare specialists broadcast specific frequencies that disrupted the harmonic resonance of the simulated crystal ships, causing their formations to break apart. When the Zephyrian drones tried to regroup, Lieutenant Commander Torres led coordinated strikes against their command vessels, leaving the rest of the fleet without coordination. Within 2 hours, the entire simulated Zephyrian fleet had been neutralized by a human force less than half its size. The real Zephyrian delegate's crystal body flashed with colors that Elena's translator couldn't interpret. "How did you know about our harmonic vulnerabilities?" "We studied your ship designs," Chen replied simply. "On Earth, we call it reconnaissance. You learn your enemy's weaknesses and exploit them." The Corvaxi representative buzzed with agitation. "Show us what you would do against our forces." Chen nodded to her team. The simulated Corvaxi swarm activated, creating the complex spiral patterns that had frustrated Zephyrian forces for decades. The drone swarm moved like a single organism, adapting and flowing around obstacles. The human response was completely different from their previous tactics. Instead of trying to break the swarm formations, they targeted the communication nodes that allowed the hive mind to function. Small, fast human ships darted through the swarm like needles, striking precisely at coordination points. Torres demonstrated what humans called decapitation strikes, removing leadership elements to cause confusion in the ranks. Tanaka showed how information warfare could feed false commands to the hive mind network, causing the swarm to attack itself. The simulated Corvaxi fleet lasted even less time than the Zephyrian force had. The chamber where both species' representatives watched the demonstration was completely silent. Finally, the Corvaxi cluster spoke in a voice much quieter than usual. "Where did your species learn such tactics?" Chen looked directly at both representatives. "We learned by fighting each other for thousands of years. Every time someone developed a winning strategy, someone else had to develop a counter to it. We've been forced to constantly adapt or die." The Zephyrian delegate's colors had shifted to deep blue and purple. "You study your enemies this carefully?" "We study everyone this carefully," Chen admitted. "It's how we've survived. When you're the weakest species on your planet, you learn to think differently." Elena watched the alien representatives process what they had witnessed. Both species had just seen their most advanced military formations completely dismantled by tactics they had never imagined. "This changes nothing," the Zephyrian finally said, but its colors suggested uncertainty. "The territorial dispute remains." "Actually," Chen said with a slight smile, "I think this changes everything." Because now you both know that there are forces in this galaxy that could defeat either of you without breaking a sweat. The question is, do you want to be enemies or allies when you meet them? Word of the human military demonstration spread through the Galactic Council faster than anyone had expected. Within hours of the exercise, representatives from other species were requesting detailed briefings. The Hegemarch called an emergency session to discuss what they had all witnessed. Admiral Chen found herself standing before the full council, with every member species represented. The chamber buzzed with nervous energy. The usual calm atmosphere had been replaced by something Elena had never seen before: uncertainty. Admiral Chen. The Hegemarch began, his golden scales reflecting the chamber's lights. Your demonstration has raised many questions among the council members. Perhaps you could explain your tactics to those who were not present. Chen nodded and activated the holographic display system. Three-dimensional images of the battle filled the center of the chamber. Certainly. We used what humans call combined arms, coordination, deception, warfare, and adaptive tactics. The Altarian representative floated forward, its large eyes glowing brighter than usual. When we attempted to read your thoughts during the exercise, we found chaos. How do you coordinate such complex strategies when your minds seem so scattered? That's exactly the point, Chen replied. Rigid thinking leads to predictable patterns. We train our forces to improvise and adapt in real time. What you see as chaos is actually controlled flexibility. Dr. Wright stepped forward to assist with the explanation. Human military doctrine evolved from necessity. We never had the luxury of ritualized combat. Our survival depended on outthinking our enemies. The Draconis representative's mechanical voice echoed through the chamber. You spoke of studying enemies. Show us how this works. Chen smiled and gestured to Lieutenant Commander Torres. Marcus, brief them on the Draconis Empire's standard fleet formations. Torres activated a new display showing detailed schematics of Draconis warships. Your empire favors heavy assault cruisers arranged in hammer and anvil formations. You rely on superior firepower and armor to overwhelm enemies. Your weakness is mobility. Those massive ships can't adapt quickly to changing battlefield conditions. The Draconis representative's metal face showed no emotion, but other council members heard grinding sounds that suggested displeasure. How did you obtain our fleet specifications? Public records, Torres replied cheerfully. Trade manifests, patrol reports, defensive agreements. Most species treat military information like state secrets. But you don't really hide it. You just never thought anyone would analyze it this way. Captain Tanaka took over the presentation. The Villani merchant fleet could be neutralized by targeting their communication arrays. Their ships are designed for cargo, not combat, so they depend on coordination to be effective. Take out their command ships, and the rest scatter. She turned to another display. The Altarian psychic networks are vulnerable to sensory overload. Jam their telepathic frequencies with enough mental static, and they lose their biggest advantage. One by one, Chen's team demonstrated how they would defeat every council species. Not through superior firepower or technology, but through careful analysis and tactical innovation. They had identified weaknesses that each species had never considered because their enemies had never thought to exploit them. The chamber grew quieter with each demonstration. These weren't theoretical discussions. The humans were showing specific, practical methods for dismantling galactic civilization's most powerful military forces. This is disturbing, said the Korvaxi representative, its 1,000 voices speaking in unison. You have prepared for war against species you had never met. Chen's expression became serious. We haven't prepared for war against anyone. We've prepared for war against everyone. It's what my species does. We study every potential threat because we've learned that the moment you stop adapting, you die. The Hegemarch's golden eyes fixed on Chen. Are you saying that Earth views all council members as potential enemies? I'm saying that Earth hopes for friendship but prepares for every possibility. Chen replied. Your species have enjoyed peace for centuries. That's made you soft. You fight wars like games because you've forgotten what real war looks like. Elena watched the council members' reactions. She could see fear in their faces, or what passed for faces among the various species. They were beginning to understand what they had invited into their alliance. The Altarian representative spoke directly into everyone's minds. "We are sensing something troubling in human thought patterns. Your species carries trauma from millennia of warfare." Chen nodded grimly. "Every human does. We've spent our entire evolutionary history killing each other with increasing efficiency. We've developed weapons that could sterilize our planet multiple times over. We've studied every possible way to destroy our enemies, because our enemies were studying every possible way to destroy us." "How horrible," whispered the Zephyrian delegate, its crystal body flickering with sad blue hues. "How necessary," Chen corrected. "It's made us very good at staying alive. And now, it's making us very good at keeping our friends alive too." Dr. Wright brought up historical data from Earth. Human military innovation accelerated because we never had galactic law to limit our conflicts. No council to mediate disputes. No rules about acceptable targets or proper tactics. Every war was total war. The displays showed the progression of human warfare through the centuries. From bronze swords to nuclear weapons, to the space-based defense systems that had protected Earth during their first contact with alien probes. The result, Chen continued, is a military doctrine based on one simple principle: win at all costs. Not honor, not tradition, not showing proper respect for your enemy. Just win. Because losing means extinction. The Villani trade representative spoke up, its slug-like body trembling slightly. "But surely you understand that such attitudes are incompatible with galactic civilization? We have maintained peace through mutual respect and established protocols." Chen looked around the chamber at all the council species. "And that's exactly why you're all sitting ducks. You've turned warfare into a performance art. You follow rules that your enemies might not. You limit yourselves to acceptable tactics while someone who wants to destroy you will use whatever works." The chamber erupted in discussion. Some council members argued that human military thinking was barbaric and dangerous. Others worried about what would happen if humans ever became hostile to the council. The Hegemarch called for order. "Admiral Chen, your demonstration has been enlightening. But it raises serious questions about Earth's intentions. Are you threatening the council?" "Quite the opposite," Chen replied. "I'm offering to protect it. Because if my small team can identify weaknesses in every council military force in just a few days, imagine what a truly hostile species could do with years to prepare." Elena stood up to support her. "Admiral Chen isn't trying to intimidate anyone. She's trying to prevent the Zephyrian-Korvaxi conflict from escalating into something that could destabilize the entire region." The Korvaxi representative buzzed with agitation. "You suggest that our conflict threatens galactic stability?" Chen activated one final display. "Your war would involve two of the most powerful council species fighting to mutual destruction. The economic disruption alone would affect dozens of systems. Trade routes would be disrupted, resource flows would be interrupted, and every minor power in the region would choose sides." The display showed probability matrices and conflict projections that made several council members gasp. The humans had modeled the likely outcomes of a full-scale Zephyrian-Korvaxi war, and the results were catastrophic. "Within 5 years," Dr. Wright explained, "you'd be looking at the collapse of the entire council alliance structure. Regional powers would form their own defensive pacts. Trade wars would become shooting wars. The peace you've maintained for centuries would be over." The Zephyrian delegates' colors shifted rapidly between different hues. "You calculated all this from our border dispute?" "We calculated it from basic strategic analysis," Chen said. "This is how conflicts escalate, when no one is willing to break the cycle." Earth learned this lesson the hard way. The chamber fell silent as council members absorbed the implications. They had been so focused on the immediate territorial dispute that they hadn't considered the broader consequences of failure. Finally, the Hegemarch spoke. "What do you propose, Admiral?" Chen smiled, and Elena noticed it was a different kind of smile than before. Not predatory, but genuinely hopeful. "I propose we show both species that they have bigger things to worry about than their border dispute. I propose we make them allies instead of enemies. And I propose we make sure that the next time someone threatens galactic peace, They have to deal with forces that actually know how to fight. The emergency meeting between the Zephyrian and Korvaxi representatives took place in a heavily shielded conference room aboard the council station. Elena watched through security feeds as Admiral Chen sat across from both alien delegates, with data displays showing the tactical analyses from their recent demonstrations. The atmosphere was unlike any diplomatic session Elena had ever seen. Both species looked shaken. The Zephyrian delegate's crystal body flickered with nervous energy, while the Korvaxi cluster buzzed with subdued anxiety. "Your demonstration was illuminating," the Zephyrian finally said, its voice carrying harmonics of uncertainty. "We had not considered that our tactical doctrines might be so easily countered." Chen leaned forward slightly. "With respect, your tactical doctrines weren't designed to be defended against. They were designed for ritualized combat against a familiar enemy. That's very different from actual warfare." The Korvaxi representative spoke in its unified voice. "Are you saying we are not true warriors?" "I'm saying you're something more valuable," Chen replied. "You're civilized beings who have found ways to resolve conflicts without mutual destruction. That's an achievement my species is still learning to appreciate." Elena felt a surge of pride at how carefully Chen was handling the situation. She wasn't insulting their military capabilities. She was reframing their limitations as strengths. "However," Chen continued, "your current dispute has the potential to destroy both your species and destabilize the entire galactic region. That benefits no one." She activated a holographic display showing the contested Nexus system. "Let me show you what human tactical analysis suggests about your conflict." The display zoomed in on the system's planets and asteroid fields. Chen's team had spent days mapping every strategic element of the disputed territory. "The Korvaxi need Nexus Prime for breeding grounds," Chen said. "The Zephyrians want the rare crystals in the asteroid belt. But neither resource requires exclusive control of the entire system." The alien representatives leaned forward, intrigued despite themselves. "Here's what humans would do," Chen explained. "Partition the system. Give the Korvaxi exclusive rights to the planet and its moons for breeding. Give the Zephyrians exclusive rights to the asteroid belt for mining. Both species get what they actually need." The Zephyrian delegate flashed skeptical colors. "Such arrangements have been proposed before. They fail because they do not address the question of honor and territorial sovereignty. They fail because you're thinking like galactic citizens instead of strategic partners." Chen corrected. "Let me propose something different." The display changed to show both species' fleet positions throughout the region. "What if, instead of fighting each other, you became allies against external threats? Pool your resources and coordinate your defenses?" The Korvaxi cluster buzzed with confusion. "What external threats? The region has been peaceful for centuries. What external 3PI? What external 3? Chen smiled grimly and activated another display. "The region has been peaceful because no outside power has had reason to challenge the Council's authority. But if two of the Council's strongest members destroy each other, that creates a power vacuum." The new display showed star maps extending far beyond Council space. Elena gasped as she recognized some of the markers. These were territories controlled by species that had never joined the Galactic Alliance. "The hegemony of Keth has been expanding steadily for the past century," Chen explained. "The Void Wraiths have been testing Council border defenses. The Machine Collective has been probing trade routes for weaknesses. They're all waiting for an opportunity." The Zephyrian delegate's colors shifted to alarmed yellow. "How do you know about these powers?" "The Council has minimal contact with them, because we studied all available data about galactic civilization before joining it," Chen replied. "We wanted to know who our neighbors were. All of them." Dr. Wright stepped forward to provide additional context. "Human strategic doctrine assumes that peace is temporary. Every alliance eventually faces challenges from those excluded from it. The Council's stability depends on presenting a united front." The Korvaxi representative was quiet for several minutes before speaking. "You suggest that our conflict serves the interests of external enemies. I'm suggesting that your conflict removes two major defensive assets from Council space, right when they're most needed." Chen said. But more than that, I'm suggesting an alternative. Chen activated a final display showing potential fleet compositions and patrol routes. Joint Zephyrian-Korvaxi Task Forces. Your species have complementary strengths. Crystal ships provide excellent sensor platforms and energy projection. Swarm tactics provide perfect close-range defense and rapid response. Elena watched both representatives study the tactical projections. She could see their attitudes shifting from defensive to intrigued. Working together, Chen continued, you could create the most effective defensive force in Council space. Working against each other, you guarantee that both species are weakened. The negotiations continued for 6 hours. Elena monitored the discussions while preparing her own reports for Earth. What she witnessed was unlike any diplomatic process she had studied. Chen wasn't just mediating between two parties, she was fundamentally restructuring how they thought about their relationship. When the session ended, both alien delegates had agreed to a preliminary alliance. The territorial dispute would be resolved through the partition Chen had proposed, but more importantly, both species would coordinate their military forces for regional defense. News of the agreement reached the council chambers within minutes. Elena joined the emergency session where council members were discussing the implications of what had just happened. In 3 weeks, said the Hegemarch, his golden scales reflecting his obvious amazement, the humans have resolved a conflict that has persisted for over a century. How is this possible? The Altarian representative provided the answer that Elena had been hoping for. They think differently than we do. Where we see honor and tradition, they see strategic objectives and tactical options. The Draconis military commander's mechanical voice carried a note of grudging respect. They approach every problem as if their survival depends on solving it perfectly. Because for their species, it always has. Elena stood up to address the council. Earth doesn't want to disrupt your civilization or threaten your peace. We want to strengthen both, but that requires acknowledging that there are still dangers in the galaxy that haven't been fully addressed. Over the following days, reports came in from across council space. The news of human tactical capabilities had spread far beyond official diplomatic channels. 3 separate territorial disputes had been resolved when local powers learned that human forces might become involved. 2 trade wars had ended when both sides realized they couldn't afford to appear weak while humans were watching. The effect was immediate and unmistakable. The mere possibility of human military intervention was changing behavior throughout the galaxy. The Council faced a dilemma they had never encountered before. They had admitted a member species whose military capabilities exceeded their collective ability to understand or counter. The question was, what to do about it? The answer came in the form of Resolution 2847, passed by unanimous vote of all council members. Elena read the final text with mixed emotions. Advisory protocols regarding human military involvement in interstellar conflicts. Council members are strongly cautioned against involving human forces in military conflicts, unless prepared for total strategic reformation of the battlefield. Human military doctrine operates outside established galactic conventions, and may result in outcomes beyond original conflict parameters. The resolution included detailed annexes about human tactical unpredictability, their tendency to escalate conflicts in unexpected directions, and their apparent inability to engage in limited warfare without seeking decisive victory. But the most telling section was the conclusion. The Council acknowledges that human military capabilities represent a paradigm shift in galactic power dynamics. All member species are advised to maintain positive relations with Earth and consider human strategic consultation for complex security issues. Elena received a private message from the Hegemarch that evening. It was brief, but significant. Ambassador Vasquez, the Council has voted to create a new position. Strategic Military Advisor to the Council Defense Committee. We would like to offer this position to Admiral Chen, if Earth is willing to accept the responsibility. Elena smiled as she drafted her response. Earth would accept, of course. But she also included a gentle warning that she thought the Council needed to hear. We're honored by your confidence in our abilities. But please remember that we've become good at warfare because we've had to be. We hope that our membership in the Council means that other species won't have to follow the same path. 3 months later, Elena stood in her office reading the morning intelligence briefings. 7 conflicts across Council space had ended without violence when local powers learned that human strategic advisors were available. 2 external powers had cancelled planned raids on Council territories. The Keth hegemony had requested formal diplomatic contact for the first time in decades. The irony wasn't lost on her. Humanity had gained galactic peace by demonstrating their mastery of galactic warfare. Her communication device chimed with an incoming message from Admiral Chen. The text was short but carried profound implications. Elena, just received reports that 3 major external powers are requesting non-aggression pacts with the Council. Apparently, they've heard rumors about our capabilities and don't want to test them. Mission accomplished? Elena looked out at the stars, visible from the Council station. Somewhere out there, civilizations that had never heard of Earth were changing their military plans because of humanity's reputation for tactical innovation. Whether they wanted to be or not, humans had become the galaxy's unofficial peacekeeping force. The question now was whether they could handle that responsibility without becoming the very thing the galaxy had learned to fear. She began drafting her next report to Earth with a simple observation: the galaxy is finally at peace. Now we have to figure out how to keep it that way.